It's good to see you all. Very excited for today's brands and outliers. So, I see a lot of people here who did not submit slides. I will forgive you this time. But next time I'm going to make it mandatory that if you show up, you have to submit slides. But this will be very fun. Let me walk you through it and what it's going to be like. And I have a lot of windows going on here because we have to coordinate a couple things. So just give me 1 second while I move stuff around. All right. So we have 10 speakers today. Because it's a little bit less than we had anticipated, you guys get 4 minutes instead of three, which is nice. You're going to see a timer that shows up in the upper right-hand corner of the screen that will start when you start your section. I'm going to be driving the slides. So when you're ready to move on to the next slide, you let me know and I'll move it. But this is fun also. It's very lighthearted. But we're not going to leave room for discussion in between these things. We'll leave the discussion at the very end. We should have about 15 to 20 minutes for us to discuss everything as a group. And this is the order you're going to go in. So take it in. Jane, you're going to be first. Maddie's second, but I don't see her here, so I don't know. We'll see. We might have to skip back and come back to her. Oh, there she is. Here she is. And then when your time is up, you'll hear some music playing, and then you gracefully exit, and we move on to the next person. Does that sound good? All righty. If that sounds good for everybody, we will go ahead and get started. So the first person we have is Jane, who is going to talk to us. Jane, give me a second. You'll have to come off speaker, obviously. Who's going to talk to us about I don't clean my teeth or elegant solutions to tangible problems. There you go, Jane.
Thank you, guys. So, yes, I don't clean my teeth because we actually brush them. What is so interesting about this category and this, whole space is that toothbrush design, the actual mass-produced toothbrush was first introduced in 1780 and it has not changed over centuries. And yes, you can tell me that we have electric toothbrushes, we have ergonomics, we have different materials, but the fundamentals of an implement with a long handle and bristles has not changed over time. If we go to the next slide, I think that it begs the question, is brushing our best solution? Is it the best we've got? Here on the left, we have what's our constants, and on the right, we have some counterpoints, and it's actually quite paradoxical. But when I look at the data in terms of Australian dental health today, what is interesting is that children aged 5 to 10, about a quarter of them still have untreated decay in their teeth. And the problem doesn't actually get better as we're older. So as children get older, from 12 onwards, we're actually finding that that number increases. That's actually about half of children are experiencing decay in their permanent teeth. And also the most shocking thing that I found is that 1 in 25 people in Australia today who are 15 and over actually have no natural teeth left. So is brushing our best solution? Not really. And if we go into the next slide, where I wanted to really land on is two scenarios as far as where we are ripe for innovation and also where we could, as a legacy brand, really, I don't know, find more relevancy with our audiences. On the left here, I just wanted to chat about this situation that, as a parent, I think it's very relatable as far as the labor of it all, the frustration, the fact that, this toil of trying to get your child to brush their teeth, but we're seeing that the outcomes aren't better. It also is that at-home care. It starts with the parents. But what if we were to innovate in this space, to disrupt, to go further upstream, bypass the brushing altogether with a solution? I think we'd all be thrilled and no longer needing a hazmat suit to clean that mirror. I think we would all be very grateful. But where I really wanted to dive into is this situation on the right, where you have some traditional, I guess, representation of how toothbrushes are a sign of, connection, cohabitation. Also, what I find really interesting is that we're no longer hard launching our relationships as much. The toothbrush is a very sort of personal implement. You don't share them. And I wonder, and when we look at this scene from Bring It On, where they're spending many minutes brushing, it's very awkward, actually, what they don't say, right? It's not about the fact that they're brushing, but what is unsaid. And I wonder, as a legacy brand, if there's something we can tap into that. The fact that toothbrushing bookends our day. It's, we begin and we end the day with it. But is it the fact that when we brush, we don't speak? So is it the things that we don't get to say or the underlying desires from the dreams at night? So I just wanted to, I don't know, I think as a content strategist, I would pitch to Colgate as far as don't go to hashtag smile strong. I think we can do better as far as talking about the symbol of the toothbrush, why we do hang on to it even centuries later, because it's not improving our dental health, but there might be something in the way that we really want to, I don't know, it's might be around connection. So I might hand over to the next speaker. I wasn't expecting the extra minute. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry for the last minute change. That was great. Thank you so much, Jane. I appreciate it. Can't wait to talk about it at the end. Alrighty, next we have Maddie, who is going to talk to us about her brand crush, which is Fern. I hope I'm saying that right.
I think so. I've never heard it said aloud. Um, Mine is far less eloquently prepared than Jane's. Mostly, I wanted to put this on your radar because it's a brand that I came across in the deep, dark depths of the interwebs. I felt very personally targeted by it. Uh, Checked it out. And now I have been spending like $129 every quarter of the year on this thing. And it's an insane special treat. I look forward to it every single dang quarter. And it is profoundly silly to me. I'm not a fragrance person, but I like look forward to this deeply. So I don't know that I've told all of you. Jasmine's heard me wax about this a bit, but I like deeply, deeply the last couple years, so much of my like thinking and my own like artistic practice with floral design and all these things has been really wrapped up in this idea of seasonality and how we understand seasons. There's like the Japanese model of the 72 seasons. Like there's beautiful, really interesting things about like why we consider the beginning of seasons to be on the dates they are, and that there's different models that have it different ways. This taps into all of that. So Fern is a brand. It's super tiny. It is started by two siblings out of Somerset in the UK. It feels deeply British in a lot of the ways that they're showing up on a lot of things. So to look into and understand this brand, I would point you to their Instagram. It's beautiful. I was going to like include videos and all that here, but like you just got to go experience this world for yourself. I think one of the most interesting things is that they are getting people interested, not just in buying a perfume sight unseen, unsmelled, but in like signing up for a subscription program. And they do that in part by like really beautifully building up what each release is going to be. So they've done short films with like Bill Nighy and some like British actor royalty you would recognize. They had like it's a lot of whimsy. They had a whole one that was just like children's fantasy fables and a whole series that came out of kids telling stories and them doing these gorgeous costumes to act them out. I think in parts it feels like old Sigaros videos, like music videos. Like there's just something to the way in which they're expressing this brand. It's like maybe Wes Anderson, but a bit less contrived. The most recent one was Apple based in the notes. And they did this whole film that was a bunch of acrobats picking apples and like standing on each other's shoulders. The whole campaign was around like how to steal apples and get away with it. Like it's just beautiful and whimsical and lovely. The other interesting thing to look into, so explore the brand, explore the films. You'll recognize artists that they work with. It's really interesting that they are the one brand that's starting to overlap the worlds and the artists and things that I pay attention to. And there'll be artists that I found like 10 years ago are suddenly doing a shoot with this brand. The other really interesting piece is then to check out their website. So they launch these perfumes, and the way in is to be added to the ledger. They don't really frame it as a subscription. Their ledger is something like 20,000 people per month are joining it, which is wild. So they say. But yeah, then there's always a try before you buy. You get to decide if you break the seal and keep it. That's the other way I get locked in. And every time I've decided to keep it because it's delightful. That's
Thank
my
you.
spiel.
Thank you, friends. All right. Next, we have Remy, who's going to talk about how critique is the product. So Remy's going to take us intellectual. Let's go, Remy.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm a bit shy. So so proud I did my slides. I was no, I was thinking last week, and there are two things or three things at the same time. The first thing was you've seen that the golden toilet on the bottom left from Maurizio Cattelan was sold for $12 million. And I waited 45 minutes in a line to see it at Sotheby's with other people. And then, of course, thinking about Trump, I thought first that, Trump welcoming a UFC match on the lawn of the White House, or what's remaining on the lawn, was a joke, and it's not. And so I was thinking, and you can alternate between the two slides because I don't really have an order, but I think we are seeing a fundamental, sorry, shift in how brands express themselves and survive. We've heard a lot about authenticity. I mean, at some point, like if you hear authenticity one more time, you just want to puke. But brands pretending to be perfect and so on. And I think I've seen a shift where the irony is now almost baked into the product, making the critique very hard. I've put some examples, but Mattel spent 150 million on a movie that attacks Barbie's own vision and sexism and so on. But Balenciaga sells literal trash bags for close to $2,000. I discussed Donald Trump. So they're not trying to hide the absurdity, they're selling it. Donald Trump is selling T-shirts with his own mugshot, which he has framed outside the Oval Office. There are many examples, like Ryanair, the shitty European airline company, like is very aggressive with people because there is no leg room and so on, like tweeting "grow up." Liquid Death, which is a brand I hate, probably because I didn't have the idea. Are very clear about, like, we know it's dumb, it's dumb, you're still buying it. Hinge in the way, the same thing. Oatly had a website where they list all the reasons to hate them. So it's very interesting. It's like when you pre-ironize, exactly like the nipple piercing bra from Skims, when you're ironizing, sorry, the critique, it makes the critique almost impossible. So I see more and more brands like these that are doing performative awareness. They're not pretending to be good. They're all saying it's all the game. It's all a game. Sorry, we're all part of the game, and we invite you to play along, which is different from pure humor. It's like really, and it's very strong in politics. It's really like the irony is baked into the product.
Excellent. Did you write about this recently? Is this part of?
I mean, it's a bit of an obsession, so not directly about this, but in several posts here.
Well, I'm going to tell you what I tell everybody. You should write about it, friend. I feel like there's so much to unpack here, and I would love to read more about that.
I will. I will. Okay. Thank you.
Very good. All right, let's end your timer here. All right, next we have Melanie, who's going to talk to us about wonder questing.
Hi. Okay. Can everybody like not hear my space heater? It's cold in Virginia right now.
We're good.
Excellent. Okay. So something I've been thinking about a little bit, right? This concept of wonder questing, and how, you know, how we're just seeking wonder in our day to day, like now in the age of wonder almost being democratized. Um, Specifically today, we're going to be talking about like pop ups and brand experiences. So on the next slide, I kind of set up what I mean by that. If we look at the spectrum of media that's come out between like 2009 to like last year, right? Um, and like the difference between the commentary when Avatar came out versus when Barbie came out really stood out to me when I was thinking about this topic. So, when Avatar came out, the number one topic of discussion was like the CGI, the special effects. Like this was so technologically advanced for its time. Fast forward to last year, you had Barbie making the headlines for causing a worldwide shortage in pink paint, right? Greta was very public about wanting to have play sets and real, truly real sets that they could interact with, they could move with, and showcase the wonder of play through that way. And something I think about a fair bit is how, as a society, we tend to pivot towards labor and effort, regardless of what's in vogue at the time. You see it a lot in like food history as well, where like spices were really expensive, they were overused, they were democratized, suddenly clean food and like lighter tasting flavors became in vogue. Like pavlovas, whipped cream, all those were really premium products until like appliance companies came out with like mixers, right? And so then they became kind of kitsch. To this point, we're seeing like AI cause like creative outputs to be just so much easier to generate. So we're starting to pivot more towards real physical, tangible things that people can touch. So on the next slide, just as a quick shout out, we're seeing some pretty big brand activations kind of play in this space. You have Ramp, who did like the office pop up. You did Taco Bell, who had like that real life retirement community. And you have Canva with that traveling brand wagon, right? It's really interesting to me that two of these examples are B2B. It's not just like a consumer pop up that you're seeing anymore. And all of them kind of hinge back to the use of physical space, the use of real human interaction, and the use of like immersive brand world building. So, in my last slide, when I'm thinking about what brand activations are going to look like in 2026, yes, we're going to see more tech support. You're going to see the robotic arms, you're going to see the holographic AI brand ambassadors, but the brands who win are the ones who are going to be able to take consumers by the hand and lead them back into the real world and like touch some grass, right? Tech is going to be a supporting actor. Physical magic is going to be the new practical events, and human connection is going to be what makes us stand out from the noise. And that's my spiel.
Thank you so much, Melanie. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have Russ, who's going to talk to us about Lemonade and Hippocratic AI. I'm very interested in this because I just got life insurance from Lemonade, so I hope you don't
Oh,
tell me.
did you really?
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's an honor and pleasure to be speaking with you all today. Thank you very much for making the time for me. So, I wanted to highlight two companies, Lemonade and Hippocratic AI, because they represent a new breed of AI first companies that aren't just adding AI to an existing category, but fundamentally reinventing it. And this is something I spend a great deal of time thinking about as an AI consultant to large Fortune 1000 organizations. The question I'm constantly asking myself is, can they compete with AI first companies? I think they can do it on a feature level, just not on a structural level. And so I'm hyper aware of companies that are entering into these spaces with AI at their core. And so Lemonade was founded in 2015. And at the time, I remember when they came into the market because I was working with several insurance companies and everybody kind of ignored them. They focused on the low end of the market in providing machine-enabled renters insurance. By machine-enabled, I mean they were just using advanced machine learning tactics. This is all pre-LLM to automate the process of purchasing renters insurance. And since that time, we've watched them kind of move up the value chain using automation and behavioral economics to deliver instant, transparent, low friction renters, homeowners, pet, and life insurance. And they're just continuing to move up the value spectrum. And if you observe their stock, it's skyrocketed here in recent days, months, excuse me. But what they did is they started by asking, how do we they didn't start by asking, how do we modernize insurance? They asked, what would insurance look like if it were built today from scratch with AI at its core? And so their entire experience, pricing, underwriting, claims, customer service is framed around automation, real-time data, and behavioral economics. And that's why they can approve policies in seconds and pay out claims in minutes. And very few of the incumbent insurance providers can do the same. And so they've completely changed consumer expectations, and the incumbents have been playing catch up ever since. So the next company is Hippocratic AI. And they're doing something very similar in healthcare, specifically in clinical support and patient-facing roles. So if you've ever visited a doctor's office and after the visit, you get like a voicemail or a call from the healthcare provider asking you to complete a survey or how was your visit. A lot of times they'll engage external call centers to provide that service. A lot of times it's mandated by law that they have these follow-ups just to ensure that they're meeting a minimum service level standard. Hippocratic AI builds safety-tuned healthcare specialized AI agents that automate a lot of these non-diagnostic tasks that are typically outsourced to third-party providers, call centers, and the like. And this dramatically reduces staffing bottlenecks because these are very difficult positions to staff. And where they've been successful is instead of trying to wedge AI into existing hospital workflows, they're rebuilding the idea of a clinical assistant from the ground up. So their LLMs are purpose-built for healthcare, trained with clinician oversight, and tuned for safety, empathy, and regulatory alignment. And so they're not replacing clinicians, they're scaling the kind of routine, labor-intensive work that burns out staff and slows down care. And so what ties these two companies together is that they start with AI as the foundation. It's not a feature. And that's where they have a distinct advantage above the incumbent companies against whom they're competing. And then they redesign the customer experience around speed, transparency, and trust. And then lastly, they're not burdened by legacy processes or technology that can deliver radical better economics. Sorry, that threw me off. So anyhow, they're a new pattern. This is a new pattern or class of AI native disruptors, and they're entering mature industries and questioning assumptions everyone else accepts and are able to rebuild the value chain in ways that the incumbents just can't. So those are two examples. Look out for more. There's tons out there.
Fantastic. Can't wait to talk about it. Thank you, Russ. All right, next we have Michelle, who blew through our slide limit, but that's okay. We love her. And she's going to talk to us about microsensory shift.
I'm a bad student, sorry. Um, so I've been thinking about this space quite a bit and feeling like oftentimes it's so easy to point the finger at things that go viral or trends and say, oh, that's all kind of like made for the gram or made for TikTok. And oftentimes I think if we really look deeper, there's something else underneath it. And one of the things I've been noticing is sensorial experiences underneath these and these kind of like microsensory experiences. So if we go to the next slide, what do two of the most viral beauty brands and candies have in common? We have this Milk Makeup viral cooling water. It's like this jelly stick that wiggles. It's cold when you put it on. And then Nerds gummy clusters, which have absolutely exploded. There's like this dual texture. You're getting something chewy, you're getting something crunchy. And it feels like what's really actually happening is that people are enjoying these embodied micro escapes. And thinking about why or how that could be happening, thinking to the next slide, um, with what I'm nicknaming this, like, I just want to feel something. So if we think of people as just being like really overstimulated right now, that might be leading them to feel a sense of numbness. So what this kind of offers is sensation as relief in your everyday habits or anything that you're doing, whether it's like applying your makeup or eating a snack or a small treat. So just some examples in beauty, kind of unserious, but people are using broccoli to create freckles, and broccoli is actually used in treatment when people need sensorial experiences. So like in autism and all sorts of uh, re-educations or things where people need that tactility. And it's interesting to see that come into the beauty space. A lot of brands are adding unnecessary textures into their products, even though we kind of think of this like less is more beauty approach. So elasticity creams are feeling elastic. You're kind of refeeling what you're doing or getting this sensation back as to what that beauty benefit is. And jelly blushes have absolutely exploded. There's the Milk Makeup example. There's this Korean brand Fui. They're super bouncy. They're super fun. It feels like a little spark of joy and sensorial effect to your routine. And then thinking towards food.
Oh, sorry. Did you want to go to the next slide?
Oh, I turned off audio, but maybe not. Yeah, you can go to the next one.
Okay. So we
Um,
turn off the, well, I don't know how
that's
to do it on here.
I think it's
There you
off. We'll see. Um, so Nerds gummy clusters, they have exploded. Nerds has like been kind of reinvented by this. And now they're coming out with juicy ones like gushers. So like really enhancing texture, getting people that sensation that locks them in. These gummies are going viral that are peelable, they're interactive,
go. Yeah.
and also freeze-dried gummies. Spicy had a huge uptick. And I think there's something to this like mochi and everything. Like it just pulls you into the experience a little bit more. There's that slight like, we know what a waffle tastes like or we know what a donut tastes like, but once you're adding mochi into it, there's a slightly more integrated feeling. And then finally into culture. Um, in pop-ups, we have like micro sensory experiences. So where it was clear that that was happening in pop-ups and lived experiences, we have things like fashion brands having that you can like enter a button to get your bag and not just talk to a person, or small little things that are put into the design of the spaces. Tactile music really growing and how people want to interact and hold that hyperphysical object. And then places like Resound, which are these experiences where you can go and feel something. So rather than just a meditation or a sound bath, there's actually a tactile element. This music is so
Thank you.
epic.
Thank you, Michelle. All right. You kind of stole some of our ideas for next month's food deck, but you are ahead of the curve for sure, friend. Those were great. Thank you. Tiago is going to talk to us now about our attention spans shrinking?
Hi, everybody. So this came to me. So I wrote a deck. One of those slides are there for Edelman regarding presentation in Cannes talking about media is culture, culture is media, and the whole pandemic distraction, how we are more distracted than ever, how the ad spend has been not creating any impact. And there was like a lot of stuff that we packed on that to show to clients that if you're not into culture, if you're not part of the conversation, that they won't cut it, right? So there is this data that says that 15% of the only 15% of the ads they reach the 2.5 second threshold of attention. So that's the minimum time that you need to have to recall an ad. So that was kind of a big presentation. Like it became kind of the backbone from about new business. But it made me think, okay, all right. So what do we do with that, right? But when say about being culture, or we are competing not only with a competition like the direct competition, but we are competing with elections. We are competing with YouTubers. We are competing with everything that is out there that we're scrolling, right? We can go to the next slide. Then I was reading, I was scrolling on LinkedIn, and Marcelo Magalhães is a friend of mine. He's a very bright strategist, and he went to this concert from CG5. I have never heard about CG5, it's Charles Green 5. This guy has 9.5 million subscribers. He's the king of the Gen Alpha in terms of entertainment. I had never heard about him before. And he just launched a concert. So he's a YouTuber, and he for those who doesn't know him, I suggest you take a look. He makes songs about music, about game games. So a lot of IPs he talks about, Among Us, FNAF, Cuphead, a lot of those IPs, these fandoms that he talks about, he creates music about those. And he moved away from YouTube, and he created in real life show called Too Many Songs Tour, which his songs 50 songs under 90 minutes. So each song of them is 45 seconds. And Marcelo writes what I think was very clever. He talks about maybe we are not, our attention span is not shrinking, because we say, oh, we move from 1.5 minutes of attention to 45 seconds in the last 10 years. But he's calling it circular. So he's saying, well, maybe it's not about attention shrinking, but it's about circularity of our attention. Because this guy, what he does, he creates those IPs, and he creates different hooks and different intensity moments, and they keep this crowd attent, like hooked by 1 hour and a half, but with different bursts of attention, which I thought that was very clever. And not only that, he also now he's branching out to his own IP. So he used fandom mythology lore to create his own spin, but now he's using that knowledge to create his own music out of that, like this ancillary add-on fandom-based IPs was very interesting. So I thought it was a very provocative post to make us think not that we need to fight against attention span, but maybe there is another way how our operating system is working and how we can take advantage of that. And
Yeah,
right on spot.
that was great. Thank you, Thiago. Sorry, I don't know why it's not. Okay, there we go. All right, so next is me, and I am going to talk about horseshoe politics, which is something that's been on my mind lately. I don't know if you guys have been noticing, but there are weird horseshoes everywhere, like very strange bedfellows, and it doesn't make sense to me. Never in my life did I think that Sean King would be applauding Marjorie Taylor Greene. If you know Sean King, he's a very big activist. He's very stern and strong in his words. He's a prolific content creator. Um, and we've all seen Marjorie Taylor Greene either changing her mind or rebranding herself or whatever it is, but he wrote a whole post about it. Candace Owens, if you've been getting Candace Owens videos from your friends, it wouldn't be uncommon. It's strange. It seems like she has a broad appeal. Even people like Pavel Durov, who is the founder of Telegram, who has been famously apolitical. I mean, at most, if you consider what he's created, he's probably libertarian. But like giving credence to her theories, conspiracy or otherwise, about how France was involved in Charlie Kirk's killing and all the other crazy stuff that we know she's been saying. Um, it's wild. And then I don't know like how much you want to take from this picture on the right, Trump dressing like Mom Donnie the day after their press conference. It was cute. Um, but that press conference, you saw in the exposure therapy Slack also sent a lot of people for a loop. And there's a lot of different explanations for this. I saw a great one that was referring to Marjorie Taylor Greene about like no one knows the tides are shifting the way a grifter does. So they're going to be the first ones to start shifting their brand. Maddie shared this great quote from somebody who had commented on a YouTube post about Trump and Mom Donnie, about how this is all part of, Trump's MO, where he lets someone feel like they're influencing him at first, and then he turns on them. That may or may not be true. I think there is some credence to that, but you cannot deny that like horseshoes is the best way to describe this. Why are there such strange bedfellows everywhere? And I think one of the arguments that people want to believe is that we've maybe become a bit more focused on identity politics, or maybe like the two-party system is very broken, which I think is very true. It's maybe not representative um, of majorities anymore. But it made me think of this quote from I forget who writes The Ruffian, Ian Leslie. And he wrote this many months ago about how there's just no statistical majority anymore, and that you can't even see a political party break 50%. Trump didn't break 40. And we'll probably never see that again. And that's really, really interesting and concerning. It creates room for perhaps a new political, order. True, maybe this creates the impetus for ranked choice voting or whatever. Um, but it does make it very hard to govern. And when you have people who are so factioned out, I think this was the point I was trying to make. It looks on the surface like it's just us versus them, one side versus another, because people do buy political ideas like, part and parcel. But I think the truth is much more complicated in that we have a bigger problem where there are just so many tribes now. How do you govern a country where you cannot get a statistical majority? Uh, I wish I could have taken this further, but this is as far as I could take this idea, and it's been sitting in my head for a long time. So this is what I have to offer. All right. Next, we have Zach, who's going to talk about checking in on post-reality.
Yeah, our favorite topic. As I was collecting signals this month, it really kind of orbited this idea at the top. You remember the Cracker Barrel outrage when they were going to change their logo? Turns out that was mostly bot driven and not exactly representative of real people's feelings. A lot of people are beginning to think this Bad Bunny outrage about him performing at the Super Bowl is the same phenomenon going on. So it's like there's this phrase in sociology, situations defined as real are real in their consequences. So we're just in the era of like situations defined as real. And this one below it is some new research that just came out. They were looking at super spreaders of misinformation. We don't have a misinformation problem. We've got a white rich lady in Arizona, Florida, and Texas problem. Like those are the super spreaders. It's actually a very small patterned individual. So again, another example of like taken for granted notions of post reality getting a little bit more complicated. Likewise, AI became the scapegoat for this big round of layoffs that was highly publicized. But then research from Yale and Brookings shows actually AI really didn't contribute to this at all. Another area where this is just the next era of post reality where it's like, okay, we all just assume it's here, so we can believe misinformation about misinformation. And then I just liked this, of course, in a cost of living crisis, when we have poisoned the belief in the goodness of others and in society in general. It's like, yeah, I'm going to use AI to create doctored food photos so I can get my DoorDash for free because the burger looks bad. So there's TikToks about people telling you how to do that effectively, and restaurants and DoorDash are losing money. And then today there was, or this weekend there was I haven't read it. It's a 20-minute read, which is just too much to take on for a Monday. But the New York Times did a expose about what happened at OpenAI last year when they dialed up like the agreeableness of the model. So it's a kind of an ethnographic report of like what was going on in the company with that. And of course, we've been talking about this a lot. You believe anything when you're more emotionally connected to the AI like that, and it's gassing you up. So it's just like all of this is like really ripe for second order implications. I wrote a piece a couple years ago about ways of knowing, because epistemology is like what you talk about when you talk about post reality. And, for too long have relied on just like external sources of trust, institutional knowing, kind of book knowing. What's going to get more important, the second order implication is like, I can only trust my feelings. And so we're becoming, and even you see it in the discourse of like, don't get into relationships now. We're just being conditioned so much the boundary of my trust begins and ends at me. We're getting conditioned to go it alone and then buy everything, even connection, through the market. So yeah, I just a lot of like I said, second order implications of what this whole moment will mean. But I just think it's just like really interesting to look at how wrong we are about things we thought we were right about, and just the continued evolution of post reality. But what's underneath that always is just the deep belief that it's only me and I can only trust me. And with my feelings, that's going to be our primary navigation, our primary way of knowing why we're into spirituality more, all these things. So, yeah, this was just a collection of stuff that I saw.
Thank you, Zach. All right. Lastly, we have Vanina, who's going to talk about therapeutic thinking, a new cultural architecture.
Hi. I have a pretty bad echo. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm going to try like this. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So Brené Brown needs no introduction, but what I'm showing here is that in 2020, she was on the cover of Texas Monthly as America's Therapist, right? And that was following a kind of viral TED Talk that she did in 2010 about the power of vulnerability, one of the biggest TEDx talks that has ever like thundered through the internet. And she became this like superstar of research-based self-help, right? But what's interesting is that she just did this interview with New York Times that is really worth a read. And she is repositioning herself and launching a book about leadership. And she has essentially been running a consultancy practice for CEOs and organizational therapy. And she, I think, sees like the big opportunity right now of the intense like technological and cultural upheaval, and is using that to like go big again with this new story that she has, this like reinvention. So the interview in the New York Times is worth a read, but then I found this interesting like Substack by a Dr. Chris Hoff, which is also really worth a read. So he has commentary on the fact that she is obviously meeting the moment because we need help and guidance to deal with like this huge change that is impacting all of our sense of identity and security across like politics, society, like the way that we communicate and align, the way that we like are increasingly divided generationally, across gender, across industries, like all of this requires a lot of help and therapeutic thinking. But I think that what's really interesting about Dr. Chris Hoff's point here is that she's like, I think, a real indicator of a bigger cultural transformation, which is this therapeutic thinking moving out of one-to-one spaces into much larger public spheres of thought, right? And I see this theme of ecology of care coming up in a lot of predictive spaces, like the LGBTQIA thought spaces or artistic thought spaces. This concept of like, how do we care for each other in the context of all of our interactions is definitely something that is emerging, gaining salience, right? And also at Maven, which is like executive education courses, I saw a lot of this need for mentorship that professionals have because they're not getting that elsewhere and they are seeking it, right? So these kind of therapeutic skills like listening, how to name power dynamics, how to manage power dynamics, how to help people navigate liminal spaces, whether it's a job transition or a divorce, like these are all things that are moving out of just the one-to-one therapeutic relationship and into our wider kind of cultural space. Which I see, if I have time left for a closing comment, as like very exciting, very optimistic about the future because of that. In a time where DEI, I think rightly is getting a lot of pushback because even though, I align with those principles, mandating it as a program is questionable. But what's exciting about this is like seeing this like cultural shift towards a real shared accountability for well-being in every shared sphere. But that's how I understand it.
That was fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, friend. All right, guys, that's it. That was everybody. This was a great set. So now we open up to discussion, just an open conversation. If anybody wants to jump in and say anything, but I thank you, all of you, for great outliers and signals and trends and brands.
Jasmine, can I say quickly something? Because I was working on horseshoe, fer à cheval in French. And I think what's very interesting is that I fully agree with what you said. I think there is a horseshoe theory of culture as well. So, we used to catalog between like high and low or kitchen camp and so on. But now you can see that a lot of cultural products are joining at the top. So I was watching Cat's Eye, this amazing K-pop, but it's K-pop plus Hollywood joining. So in terms of like hyper manufactured product, for the algorithm, whether even if you look at TED Talks and mega church sermons from time to time, or true crime or QAnon, or, there are a lot of products that are happening at the top of the horseshoe, whereas the real culture is happening now at the bottom on the Discord servers, on etc. So I think also it could apply to culture.
Wow. Right about it, friend. That's awesome. I didn't even think of it like that. You have such a cultural intelligence that like nobody else here has, Remy.
Yeah, that's
That's
why I have no job.
I'd say that world of the brand collabs and even a lot of the examples that came up here and Remy, your point, I think is a wild one. There's like, I have a very front row seat to that in LA because there's a lot of these like physical pop-ups and events. And I've never been in a space of like brand activations that operates quite like LA. I don't know how anyone finds out about all of them. Like worlds unknown to me. But even like I was watching the F1 race in Vegas this weekend, and like there has been a big announcement of Disney and F1, and everyone's been wondering like, what the heck? What are they doing together? And right before the podium, like right after the interviews with the three winning drivers this year, Mickey Mouse took over the Bellagio fountain and Disney did the fountain show. And Mickey Mouse was in the middle of it. And it was this really interesting layer where it wasn't like characters being projected. It was like tastefully done, felt magical, but like, what on earth is Disney doing with F1? I have no idea, apart from the fact that Disney knows how to merchandise the hell out of anything.
Yeah.
And F1 doesn't understand that yet. But like, yeah, the brand collabs happening at like the highest level of like Apple, F1, Disney, and then at the most ground the groundswell level too. It's a really interesting world.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have stuff I wanted to say. Melanie, your thing reminded me of this idea I've been playing around with where I don't know if it holds water, but it
Mhm.
feels like more and more things are just the pre-market for real life events. Like everything has become a pre-market, just the way like movies became the pre-market for DVDs at some point,
Mhm.
and we all people always thought it was the other way around. But I don't know, because still a lot of the money is made on the non-IRL side of things. Like, I was thinking of like those D&D guys, Critical Role. I don't know if
Yeah,
anybody here is in that. Yeah.
heard
And
about that.
like they still make stupid money just off of like their video content, but their IRL stuff is getting huge. Um,
Well, no, I mean, so yes, right? And the kind of flip or the underbelly to a lot of that is like, I've been working with some of my media optimization clients, and it's just, y'all, it's getting so expensive to
yeah.
target anybody on digital marketing. Like your budgets are going up. It's exciting in some ways because it's getting easier and easier to like attribute performance, much to like us worrying about privacy and all that jazz. But at the same time, that like over reliance on being able to own like this click led to $100 is starting to force people, because you don't know how to sell any other way, to like over index on like your warm audiences.
Yeah.
And when you start to ignore your upper funnel, which is happening to a couple of my clients, like you're squeezing fruit juice out of fruit that you've squeezed too much, right? And you got to find a new orchard. So that's a really weird metaphor.
That's a great
But
metaphor.
but like the physical activations, the social equity you get from having a tangible experience that somebody can hold and understand your brand, like that's kind of the missing link to help re-optimize what we're doing in paid media again. Um,
Excellent insight.
yeah,
That's excellent. I didn't even tie those things together.
it's cool. Michelle, I loved like hyper sensation. Is that the term? Is that a new thing that we found out now? That was amazing. Hyper physical. So, so cool.
And there's like a micro trend underneath that
Mm,
especially when we work in product development. So oftentimes like we'll be asked to research a category and then help build a CPG product. And a lot of it feels like, I think like Jasmine, you were talking about intersectionality a lot, and there's a lot of themes actually in Concept Bureau that I've seen play out in actually product development, which has been fascinating, where people like when these like friction based things come together, like a Nerds Gummy cluster.
Yeah. I think you like next month's drop. The Nerds Gummy Cluster, of course, has to make an appearance. But what we talk about there is also like what you talked about with the flattening of experiences and wanting to like respond to numbness. And then also like the algorithm, like to sell more, you just have to like bring all the other senses to life. Especially because we were writing about the food category, but beauty and food have such a natural, close relationship to each other too, that uh it makes sense that it would happen on social, that the algorithm rewards that kind of stuff. And then,
I wonder.
go ahead.
Sorry, Jasmine, I had a lot of coffee. A lot of people talked about I just want to feel something, whether it's Malini or Zach or Michelle and so on. And I wonder if, 2025 has been called by, I can't remember who, the great uncancellation. And I remember, I wonder if the fact that we're uncanceling people and bringing back the monsters and also the leftovers, like Louis C.K. is now sold out. Like, what's the name of this moron? Shane Gillis or whatever is now like sold out. Or Nick Fuentes, obviously. Budweiser now is like, if it's just like because the mainstream in a way is so boring, or it got so boring that we're bringing people who are so controversial, at least to make us feel something. Not me, but some people.
That's interesting. I could buy that for sure.
I mean, it's not the only reason. There is a political context and so on, but
Yeah.
they're bringing back some people that are like fairly, but like at least you're shocked. It's almost a bit taboo, but like you're feeling something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
I
is
like
feel
it?
like that. I'll go,
sorry.
Zach.
What political
Go.
correctness kind of does is it is like a homogenization of feeling, and it's a temperature going down. It's not primal. There's not passion. It's like grand utopian ideal, right? And like so, yeah. I mean, the like it's kind of like anathema to passion. So I sort of get where you were going.
It almost feels like there's like head processing and body processing. And like we've been in this space for the last at least 8 years in politics and in all things as far as like political correctness and like being in those spaces where you're not entirely sure if you should say something a certain way. And so maybe you don't say it at all. And it's a really interesting layer where like I went to Harvard and everyone from Idaho was like, oh my God, liberal bastion, world of political correctness. And while there, I was like, I don't feel it. Like I'm having all sorts of conversations. I'm hearing all sorts of perspectives. And it's been really interesting since graduation, like 10, 12, I won't do the math years ago, but seeing how much campus has changed and how much people are saying, like, yeah, the conversations aren't happening in the same way. And like people are self filtering. And like, how do
Mm,
we bring back the spirit of what it meant for the campus to be a safe space for conversation that wasn't going to be recorded, that wasn't going to be posted to TikTok,
yeah.
where like you can say the controversial things because you're learning and like you don't have to be perfect. And so I think it's really interesting to layer that with like the humor month, and what we're doing this month is like comedians in particular are ones who are being able to say like, hey, I'm going to say some not politically correct things because we need a laugh. And like I'm going to tell you up front that the words aren't going to be perfect because the perfect words don't get a laugh. And like that Gianmarco set that I shared is like a profound example of that. But even the comedy night that a bunch of us went to after the New York dinner was like they specifically design in that all of your phones get turned off and shoved in a bag, and that
Yeah.
bag is sealed the entire time because nothing can be taken out of context and posted elsewhere. You're there for the entire journey of a joke as a comedian's developing it, and you can't take a segment, post it online, and have that get them canceled. Like comedy
Mm,
must exist in a space where you don't have 30 seconds of someone's attention. You have an hour to explain yourself and get people there and get them to where like they might laugh at something that would not be funny if they ever came across it somewhere else. But at 3 in the morning, in that unfiltered world, like you've got people on the edge of their seats just cackling. And
mm.
like I, in that night, Bia can speak to this, but I was cackling at things that I probably would not have thought was that funny in another world. But like in that context, this whole like Barbie joke just kept going and going. And I was like in tears. And it's so fascinating to be like, if I found a clip of that, I don't think I could share it with anyone else, have them understand what made it so funny. But yeah, comedy is like the antithesis of like
Yeah.
so many of the people we cancel, they're comedians too. And like, yeah, we're welcoming them back on stage for reasons being that like we don't want to have to self filter and like worry about every word we say in the same way.
I do think another part of this, in terms of the microsensory shift, is also just changing relationships with like our bodies and embodiment and like that whole broader, like how disconnected we are in a lot of ways from our other senses because we spend so much time in our heads and in conversations and on screens. And so I think that desire to get like really tactical or like fragrance fits in here and like all of those things that sort of engage other types of intelligence at a time when, despite all of our obsession with data, I think people are making more emotional, intuitive decisions for better or worse. I think all of that is kind of related.
So, are we moving into an age of context where everything is really going to be judged on the context in which it's presented?
I don't know about that.
Because the opposite is happening on TikTok, where it's everything out
Well,
of
Exactly.
the
context all the
opposite has
time.
happened on TikTok, but again, there's been some um, pushback on that.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, you think about what happened on X the other day when Elon the whatever, was indicating where the sources of some of the key information providers, and they were finding that a lot of the really negative stuff about the
Yeah.
U.S. was coming out of Africa, Asia, etc. You look at that in context, and it's the whole notion of it. Also, I guess, kind of at least is percolating in my head at this point of there's a challenge between attention span and nuance and context. And the more context we have, the better we can understand what's going on and maybe not be so quick to rush to judgment. But that also sort of conflicts with we don't have enough time to get through half the things we need to get through every day.
It's very true, but I do feel what you're describing, that there is actually an appetite for context that we see showing up
Yes.
in certain places. And I wonder if horseshoes is a form of context making, like when you,
I mean, yeah, in a way it is
yeah,
because
it
it's
could
it's
be.
what you were describing as horseshoe. I've just been describing to people's like bizarro world.
That
I
too.
think
With
there's
with
like, oh,
with
sorry,
with
go ahead.
all these people who I would never ever see being in the same room, let alone even giving each other oxygen.
Yeah.
And it seems like a lot of Candace Owens stuff and a lot of other things have popped up on a few of my streams. And it's interesting listening to her and interesting listening to her in the full context rather than the sound bites, if you will. And maybe it's a whole notion of we need to get away from sound bites and we need to somehow demand that media stops feeding us so many incendiary and inflammatory sound bites, even though, again, too, we as marketers use it to get talk going. I don't know what the answer is, but it seems like everyone needs to chill out a little bit, listen a bit more, and go more for the nuance than the immediate react. It's sort of like we need to respond more than react.
But I think that's why
Yeah.
some of the horseshoe people are really popular. Like people listen to the 3 hour podcast or watch the
Yeah.
2 hour
Yeah.
YouTube interviews, which to me seem really boring. Like
Yeah.
I'm fine with the sound bites because I just want to keep up with what's happening. But an overall trend I've noticed amongst the people who are researching like the rightward drift of people of color and women and demographics that we wouldn't expect. It's all about answering people's questions about how our world is changing or about existential concerns. Sometimes it's as benign as like, how do I have a better relationship with my immigrant parents? And sometimes it's like, what's going on? Why are we spending so many of our tax dollars helping these other countries?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if I call it context necessarily, but there is that really big desire that these unexpected figures are kind of answering those questions, and at least the sound bites that I see of these bigger shows are um, are offering that.
It's interesting because I think there are differences between sound bites and summaries.
Hmm.
And yeah, I'd love having stuff summarized that it's because God knows I am not going to spend any 3 hours on any podcast, let alone on anything practically in
Hmm.
my life. But having sound bites are almost like too little and summaries. A couple of sentences is like this, what is it, too long, don't read types of summaries
Okay.
that are out there,
Yeah.
I think are helpful because it at least provides a bit more of the context so that if I want to explore it more, I can. But I also can walk away feeling like I may not be the most intelligent person on that topic, but I at least have a little more understanding than if it had just been one or two sort of reactive sentences.
Yeah. The yeah, I agree with that. I think the way that this connects back to the hyperphysicality trend that we've been talking about, like Michelle, you showed the slide of the vinyl records, and people are just going more into that physical category. Like when I was in New York in May, there were all these ads for those past generation like iPads and Beats headphones and things. And it seems like people are embracing friction quite a lot. Almost, I wonder if it's like to prove that they're human, doing the needlepoint or raising the chickens or doing the gardening. I've been getting more into sewing again, which I did as a child. these like hobby things that are so much more difficult than what we would, than just trying to buy something. But it feels like in a reaction to everything getting so easy and at our fingertips that they've lost some of the meaning and joy that they used to have. So I'm all here for like the squishy. I think that's so funny. And I wonder if in addition to like feeling, there's another deeper thing about like needing to prove our humanity. But
Thank
I don't know
you.
if that's like too much of a stretch.
So we're at time, guys. I'm sorry, I have to cut this call
Oh,
off. But I appreciate it, Connor and Peter and everybody who commented. And thank you again to our presenters. Let's keep the conversation going in Slack, please. I have thoughts on this too. Um, thank you all. I hope you enjoyed it. I thought this was great.
Thanks,
All right,
guys.
guys. See you next time.
Have a good Thanksgiving.
Yes. Bye, everybody.